So Remi French,
Yeah.
welcome to the Share Chair.
Thank you.
Cool. Let's get into it. What kind of colleges have you applied to? What have you done?
My number one is Wesleyan University, and that's in Connecticut. So it's really far away. Not really far, but far enough from Michigan. I really want to leave Michigan. I mean, in perspective, it's safe for families, and we have Lake Michigan, which no one else has, freshwater lakes like that. But just like the overall atmosphere here, and just the fact that you have to go so far to get places, and there's so much you're not having. Like, there isn't a Whole Foods on the west side of the state, which sounds really weird, but I love Whole Foods. And Wesleyan University is exactly 2 hours from downtown New York City and downtown Boston. So, and it's only 20 minutes from Hartford, so the airport's right there too. So it's like really easy access to get wherever, you know, because you can go to Boston for you can see baseball games or football games or whatever you wanted to do, or any type of activity like that. Or like New York has Broadway, and it's New York City.
It's got everything.
Yeah.
So that's the draw to the big city. And what are you thinking of studying when you get to college?
Well, it's not as much of the big city as much of it is like having options. Because Middletown is where Wesleyan is, and it's actually smaller. It's like the college itself is 3,000 people. So it's not as much of like big city, it's just more of access to stuff. I want to double major in economics and neuroscience. I just really liked economics as a whole, so I wanted to do that. I've known that since I took econ in 10th grade. And then neuroscience is actually going to help me. I want to go to law school after college too. And neuroscience is going to help me get into law school because I want to study how like the brain works, and go into seeing if there's ways you can improve lie detector tests through like brain waves and how neurons function.
So what draws you to law?
My parents divorced when I was 5 or 6, and we lived in North Carolina at the time, and it was kind of weird because I was the only kid in my school that had divorced parents, I think. Wow. or because I did go to a private school then, and at least up through K through 3rd grade, I was the only kid. And no one even knew what it was. I just described it as like, my parents don't live together, because that's what it was to me, but they stayed really good friends for a really long time. And then when we moved back to Michigan, they both moved back. My dad remarried, and there were a bunch of issues, so they went through a custody battle, and that's kind of when they started not being friends. But throughout the custody battle, I kind of never had a say on like what I wanted. It was just like people fighting in court over making decisions for me. And at this point, I'm like 10 or 11, so I know what's going on. I'm really aware, and I just never really got a say in what was going on. And so I just want other people to be heard and to know that like other people can have a voice. I like arguing, I like making really good arguments, and the fact that's really what drew me towards law, was being able to give people a voice. But I also like to make really good arguments.
Would you mind talking about the impact of the divorce then? It sounds like it's had quite an impact on what you even want to do, but as of now, what are you, 18 now?
Almost
18-year-old. So
February 3rd, I'll be 18. The divorce itself, back when I was like 5, wasn't really a big deal. It was just kind of, they separated. They were always really good friends. Like we would all still go out to dinner every once in a while. And my dad traveled a lot, so he wasn't around a lot. Even from the beginning. Even when they were together, he traveled for his job, so he was come and go. And so it was kind of the same thing. It really, in retrospect, a lot didn't change, except that there were just 2 houses now, because my dad wasn't around a lot to begin with, and when he was around, I did spend time with him. So, and that's kind of how it was from the beginning, even in the marriage. In retrospect, both parents didn't handle it correctly, but there's also not a good way for each parent to handle certain aspects. Back then, it did have a huge impact because I was torn, you know. I didn't get to see my dad a lot, but I always loved him and grown up with him. Things that happened at home were off, even like everyday situations where you'd get in a fight with one of the parents, you know, even if it's not a big deal, but you just like get upset and you need space or whatever. Something like that would come up in court, like, oh, well, you two had a disagreement, and I mean, it's crazy how things can be nitpicked and turned against one parent or the other. It was very negative on me at the time. In the end, I do spend more time with my mom, and it's still court ordered that way, but now that I'm almost 18, they kind of just let me decide for myself what I want to do, where I want to live. And I mean, it did hurt, you know, it hurt a lot. And, but things have been settling down more, now that I'm older, and now I can make decisions for myself.
How does this, do you think, like, play into that? How does this influence your relationships, would you say?
At the time of the whole custody battle, I did become more aggressive as a person, and I do recognize that, and I do recognize that some of the people that I knew back then called me a bully. I do notice that I'm still kind of aggressive, and I really try and work on that as a person, to not come off like that and to not, you know, be super sarcastic and mean.
It was very obvious before when you were speaking in the beginning, like how your frustration with the sleepiness of West Michigan, and that's super relatable for all teenagers.
Yeah.
But what are the advantages and disadvantages of growing up in a place not as modern as New York or something?
Oh, I mean, overall safety would probably be the number one thing. Yes, there are still things that happen. There are things that happen everywhere. I mean, you can't really avoid that. The area is really, really nice. I mean, people in Michigan don't really realize what they have. Like, my grandma brings her friends to Michigan quite often to show them around, and they think like Michigan, they think you can see Chicago. Mm-hmm. They think that you can see across Lake Michigan and see Chicago, and then we're like, no, it's an ocean. It's like, it's pretty much an ocean out here. That's something that we take advantage of. I mean, people in Spring Lake go boating every summer, and there are people in Kansas who would never even imagine seeing fresh water as big as an ocean. And I'm not a very conservative person, which happens to be a lot of West Michigan, which is okay. Everyone's entitled to an opinion. I have nothing wrong with people being conservative. It's nice to be around other people who think more towards the same way that you would, you know.
Question about lawyering. Do you think do you have a tendency or a leaning toward prosecution or defense?
You know, I've thought about that, and it would be defense, but not for a criminal purpose. I want to defend other kids that were like me. If I truly believe someone's innocent in a criminal case, I would defend them, but because one of the first rules is to your lawyer, you have to tell them if you did it or not, because they need to know, you know, how to approach things. And I knew they were guilty. I personally don't think I could bring myself to defend something like that. I mean, that's really difficult. And so I would probably lean more towards like family defense and giving people voices. I really just want to fight for someone who strongly believes in whatever it is.
Yeah. Awesome, Remi. Thanks so much for being on the Share Chair.
Thank
Anytime.
you.
Cool.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Share Chair. Stay tuned next week for a new one. Also, check us out on Facebook and Twitter for regular updates at The Share Chair. And if you're interested in having a piece of your writing or an experience shared on the podcast, contact Elise McGannon at 203-505 at springlakestudents.org.